suspicion that he is not practicing what he preaches.
We are living in a time like his time, when religion had become stale, religion had become didactic, religion had become a dry practice of argumentation, dialectic debate amongst students. Imam al-Ghazali, I think, of all of his achievements, and we can see this in his own autobiography, one of the things that he really set out to do was end argumentation for argumentation's sake.
I was distressed by what was going on in the capital of the empire. I decided to speak out, and I condemned the hypocrisy of those surrounding the caliph. I was critical of Islam's religious and political leaders. I was determined to unveil the truth in its entirety.
He really recognized the spiritual pathology of the desire of the ego and the self to overcome one's opponent. And he wanted to get back to something much deeper, which is not that I am entrenched in my personal opinion, agenda, political position, and I have no recognition of my opponent, but to recognize that my opponent and myself must together be in search of the truth. And if the two of us are in search of the truth, we can speak. But if we are in search of self-aggrandizement, if we're in search of some ego-stimulating experience, of overpowering my debater, then we come to nothing. And because he was a man that could win any debate, he knew how important it was that the ego could not be the object, that the ego must be set aside in order for that debate to come to some kind of fruition.
سلام علیکم.
سلام علیکم.
بفرمایید. سلام علیکم.
سلام علیکم.
سلام علیکم.
خواجه از راه دور آمدم، راه در بساط ندارم، چیزی به من ببخش.
من اینجا چه دارم به تو ببخشم؟
Kill one man, and you may well terrorize 10,000. But is this what we were created for? While it's unclear who was actually behind the assassination of Ghazali's patron, Nizam al-Mulk, it may have prompted him to begin re-evaluating the life he was leading in Baghdad.
محمد بچه‌ها کجایید؟
Ghazali had a brother, Ahmad al-Ghazali, who went on to become a major poet and Sufi figure in Persian literature. The relationship between the two men must have been a complex one. It seems to have been very affectionate, but it's almost certain that Ahmad al-Ghazali, more interested in ecstatic experiences, pouring forth these great torrents of rather Baroque Persian poetry about the love of God, was probably a little bit skeptical about the philosophical and theological activities of his brother.
شرمندم که چنین مصدق میشم. مطلبی بود که قصد داشتم در خلوت با تو بیان کنم، نه در محضر خانواده.
طوری شده؟
صحبت بسیاری در شهر و دانشگاه است، مبنی بر اینکه وای بر من گر ببینم برادرم چنین رخسارش زرد و پریشان شده است. آخر چگونه است؟ مگر بر تو چه گذشته است که جاه و مقام چنین در چشمانت ریشه دوانده؟ مگر از آن چیزی؟
I think what's happening to Imam al-Ghazali really is he wanted to be real, and I think he recognized how false he was. The fact that in the West we call personality, which is from the Roman word persona, which means mask, is already an awareness that the personality is somehow we're hiding behind something. And I think what happened was he became aware of his personality. He became aware of this mask, this exterior that he was presenting to the world, which was the wonder boy, the genius, the brilliant dialectician. And he's realizing that this can't be me, because he's realizing how horrible that person is.
Despite my success, my wealth and my status, my doubts returned. Not in what I believed, but in the way I was living my life, surrounded by great material wealth.
It may well be that the sanctity and spirituality and the effusive quality of Ahmad al-Ghazali's Islam was a kind of counterpoint to the formal book-based systematic theology that al-Ghazali was experiencing and dishing out in the mosques. And it may well be that eventually it was Ahmad's example, somebody who had cracked the problems of the meaning of life through the love of God and experience rather than through logic chopping, was the final straw that broke the camel's back and precipitated the crisis.
تو دستت را به طرف آنها دراز می‌کنی و آنان پس می‌زنند. خود از قافله عقب مانده ای و آنها بی توجه می‌گذرند. تو راهنما شده ای، اما به راهنماییشان گوش نمی‌پنداری. سخن می‌گویی اما به سخنانشان گوش فرا نمی‌دهی. آخر ای سنگ نمور، تا کی برای تراشه آهن بر آن آب می‌پاشی؟ اما هرگز نمی‌اندیشی که خود خیس شده ای.
He came to a realization that all of this intellectual knowledge was in fact a very, very well camouflaged ignorance. And because he was ignorant of the most important thing, which was himself.
For 6 months I was constantly tossed between my worldly desires and my longing for eternal life. In the end, the matter stopped being one of choice and became one of compulsion.
And this is where the crisis begins. And he says that one day he would put a step forward and the next day back, and he said, I have to give up all this stuff. I have to find out. I have to set out on this path. And he's feeling the time. He's feeling this clock, this clock ticking. He's realizing, I've limited time here. Most of us don't like to think about that. The fact that we have no guarantees about tomorrow. He is really at that point where he realizes, I am mortal, I'm going to die. Have I prepared for this journey? And this is the only real crisis that has any meaning for a human being. So he had the truly existential crisis of the human condition, which is our mortality.
God caused my tongue to dry up so that I was incapable of lecturing. Each day I'd try hard to teach so as to please my students, but my tongue wouldn't utter a single word, nor could I accomplish anything at all.
إلا الذين
For a man who has risen to prominence because of his tongue, to have his tongue taken away from him means that his prominence is taken away from him. He has lost everything in his inability to speak.
بی تو به سر نمیشه
The crisis did not start with a physical illness, which would bring depression, you might say, modern terminology. It began with a mental, intellectual crisis and gradually seeped into a psychological or whole psychosomatic reality, into soul and body, you might say. And it went from up down and gradually began to affect his habit of eating, his appetite, his sleep, and he fell seriously ill.
فکر میکنم بیماری قلبی داره.
ولی به نظر من مشکلش باید مغزی باشه.
نه، مشکل از گردش خونشه. من که نمیتونم کاری بکنم.
از دست منم کاری ساخته نیست.
منم مثل شما کاری از دستم بر نمیاد.
پس هر سه توافق داریم.
ناراحتی جسمی نداره، روح و روانش بیماره.
I examined my motives and realized that my work was not driven by a pure desire for the things of God. Instead, I was motivated by the desire for an influential position and public acclaim. I saw for certain that I was on the brink of a crumbling bank of sand, and in imminent danger of hellfire unless I undertook to change my way of life. I knew that the Sufi way combines intellectual belief and practical action. The action takes the form of purging the obstacles in the soul and of stripping away its base characteristics and vicious morals, so that the heart may achieve freedom from everything that is not God. The intellectual belief was easier, but it became clear to me that what is most distinctive in Sufism cannot be grasped by study alone, but only by immediate experience, by ecstasy, and by a moral transformation. The Sufis were people not of words, but of experience. I had no hope of the next world unless I